Coming up on the World Today. U.S. National Guardsman Jack Teixeira also arrested by FBI over Pentagon document leaks. German foreign minister urges China to exert influence on Russia to end Ukraine war. Plus hundreds of war prisoners exchanged between Yemen's Houthis and Saudi Arabia. Hello and welcome to the World Today on Channels Television. Thank you for joining us. I'm Anne Nwawadu. A member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard has been arrested by the FBI in connection with a leak of classified documents that have been posted online. The arrest of 21-year-old Jack Teixeira follows a fast-moving search by the U.S. government for the identity of the leaker who posted classified documents to social media platforms popular with video gamers. Attorney General Mary Garland announced that Teixeira was arrested in Massachusetts without incident and will be arraigned in the federal high court there.
I'm joined today by Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco and FBI Director Paul Bate. Today, the Justice Department arrested Jack Douglas Teixeira in connection with an investigation into alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information. Teixeira is an employee of the United States Air Force National Guard. FBI agents took Teixeira into custody earlier this afternoon without incident. He will have an initial appearance at the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. I want to thank the FBI, Justice Department prosecutors, and our colleagues at the Department of Defense for their diligent work on this case. This investigation is ongoing. We will share more information at the appropriate time.
Meanwhile, UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric says the UN chief Antonio Guterres is not surprised about the leaks as he's been in politics for quite a long time. The U.S. Department of Justice opened a formal criminal probe just last week after the matter was referred to by the Pentagon, which is assessing the damage done. Some of the most sensitive leaked details are purportedly related to Ukraine's military capabilities and the shortcomings, and information about U.S. allies, including Israel, South Korea, and Turkey.
Secretary General's been at his job for quite some time. He's been in politics and a public figure for quite some time. So he's not surprised, I think, that by the fact that people are spying on him and listening on his private conversations. Unfortunately, either for various reasons, it allows such private conversations to be distorted and made public.
Will he be protesting to the United States about this?
Well, we're not in the habit of revealing his private phone calls with various member states. I don't think me answering publicly what precautions we take in detail for our phone calls would be helpful in trying to protect the sanctity of communications.
What about the substance of this?
The Secretary General is not soft on any one country or another. On the conflict in Ukraine, he has been very clear about the violations of international law, very clear about the violations of the Charter. He says the same thing when he's in Moscow, when he's in Kyiv, when he's in New York, and that's in the open record. Our efforts, his efforts, have been to mitigate the impact of the war on the world's poorest, and that means doing what we can to drive down the price of food and the price of grain and fertilizer worldwide. The position of member states vis-à-vis the Secretary General's position on the war in Ukraine and its efforts is very public.
To other stories now, North Korea says that it has tested a new solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, Hwasong-18, to radically promote the country's nuclear counterattack capability, the warning of extreme uneasiness and aura to the enemies. It comes as South Korea said that North Korea fired what appeared to be a new model ballistic missile yesterday, triggering a scare in northern Japan, where Hokkaido residents were initially told to take cover. The missile, fired from near Pyongyang, flew about 1,000 kilometers before landing in waters east of North Korea. North Korea's state media said the new type ICBM Hwasong-18 will reform the strategic deterrence components of the North. It will also promote the effectiveness of its nuclear counterattack posture. But analysts are saying that it will mark the North's first use of solid propellants in an immediate and intermediate range or intercontinental ballistic missile fights. Meanwhile, South Korea and the United States conducted a joint air exercise involving 2 U.S. B-52 bombers. Footage released by South Korea's defense ministry shows the U.S.'s B-52H bombers and F-16 fighter jets, as well as South Korea's F-35A fighter jets, flew in formation throughout the drills. The air drill is coming after North Korea test-fired a new solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile just yesterday. But North Korea has criticized recent U.S.-South Korean joint military exercises as escalating tensions and has stepped up weapon tests in the past months. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has met with his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in Beijing, receiving a warm welcome during his official visit to China. Lula and his wife, Rosângela Lula da Silva, were welcomed by Xi and the First Lady, Pen Luiyan, after their arrival. After greeting delegates, Lula and Xi watched a welcome ceremony before proceeding into the Great Hall of the People. The Brazilian president has said that he will suggest Mr. Xi a proposal to mediate peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, an initiative that among Western leaders has only been welcomed by French President Emmanuel Macron. Lula's visit, postponed from March for health reasons, aims at resetting relations with Brazil's largest trade partner following a frosty 4 years under his far-right predecessor, Jair Bolsonaro. Well, as we reported earlier, Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock is in China on a visit that she hopes will rebalance Germany's relationship with the country. Her trip is coming just as Beijing has been staging military drills around Taiwan, with Chinese military encircling the island and simulating missile attacks. For more, I'm now being joined by DW's Marie Sina in Berlin. Hello, Marie, and thank you for joining us. And the German minister is visiting at a tense time. What is the message she brought to Beijing?
Yeah, on her debut visit, Annalena Baerbock found a very clear message during a press conference today. Her message regarding Taiwan is that a military escalation would be a, quote, horror scenario. She's also said that any change to the status quo between China and Taiwan would be crossing a red line for Europe. She's emphasized that it's in no one's interest, not in the interest of Taiwan, not in the interest of China, and not in the interest of Europe or the US to have a military escalation, not least because of the economic implications. 50% of world trade pass through the Taiwan Strait every day. So she's found a very clear message, clear words, and in a way, these clear words are also damage minimization. Earlier this week, French President Emmanuel Macron visited China, and he took a soft stance on the Taiwan issue, saying that Europe should stay out of conflicts that aren't its own, and insinuating that the Taiwan issue is mainly between China and the US and doesn't concern Europe. And now Baerbock has been very keen to say Europe does care about the Taiwan issue.
What else is on the agenda for her visit? We're talking about her itinerary. What else does she have?
The other big point on the agenda for Annalena Baerbock's visit is the war in Ukraine. She mentioned it today during the press conference with her Chinese counterpart. She found very frank words saying that she's wondering why China has not called on the aggressor in this war, which is Russia, to stop the war. Basically asking China to use its influence to stop the war in Ukraine. And this is happening in a context in which Xi Jinping has not condemned Russia's actions in Ukraine and has actually doubled down on China's partnership with Moscow. And so Baerbock's very strong words here correspond with Europe's view on this issue overall, which is that it's best to stay engaged with China in order to keep a bad situation from becoming worse. Becoming worse in this case would mean China, for example, supplying weapons to Russia, which is something that would inevitably escalate the war and cause a giant rift between China and Europe here. So Baerbock really finding a clear line here to say, look, stay in line and don't make a bad situation worse. And in terms of other agenda points, Annalena Baerbock is, of course, a green politician. So without a doubt, she will address the topic of climate change. China is the biggest CO2 emitter in the world. And she's also expected to talk about the human rights abuses happening in China against the Uyghur minority. Annalena Baerbock has been very outspoken and very critical about human rights abuses in China in the past. And there is a lot happening in the world right now, of course, with Taiwan, of course, with the Ukraine war. And she will be keen to show that she will still address these human rights abuses and will not let other issues overshadow them.
Well, Marie, I mean, those are significant agenda points you've mentioned there, but how much legroom does Germany's foreign minister actually have talking about relations between Germany and China?
The question of how tough Germany can really get with China is an interesting one, and that's because China has a very layered relationship with Germany, and Germany has a very layered relationship with China. Annalena Baerbock herself has called China a partner, a competitor, and a systemic rival. Three very, very different roles, and it's the first role, the role of partner, that makes it very difficult for German politicians to take a tough stance on China, and it's because China is Germany's most important trading partner. Germany is more reliant on China economically than France, for example. And specifically for Annalena Baerbock in the area of the green economy, Germany is very reliant on China. For example, Germany needs cheap solar panels, and China provides cheap solar panels. Germany wants to build more electric vehicles, and who makes the batteries for those vehicles? It's China. So without China, Germany's economy is in big trouble, and that makes this wiggle room for demands and maybe even threatening sanctions really very, very small.
Thank you very much, Mari. The release and the swap of nearly 900 detainees by the two sides in Yemen's conflict has begun, a significant confidence-building measure as peace talks between Saudi envoys and Houthi rebels intensify. The International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC, which is managing the prisoner exchange, said its planes will be used to carry the released detainees between 6 cities in Yemen and in Saudi Arabia. Warring parties agreed to negotiations in Switzerland last month to free 887 detainees and to meet again in May to discuss further releases. This deal was overseen by the United Nations envoy for Yemen, Hans Grunberg, and the ICRC. Negotiators had hoped for an all-for-all deal involving all remaining detainees during the 10 days of talks. These negotiations were the latest in the series of meetings that led to the release of prisoners back in 2022 and in 2020 under a UN mediator deal known as the Stockholm Agreement. British Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt said that there is no room for complacency in tackling low growth and high inflation after data showed the economy stagnated in the month of February and hurt by strikes among public workers. Mr. Hunt says the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, is very clear that the British economy is on the right track.
The growth numbers show there is absolutely no room for complacency. Inflation is higher than we want, growth is lower than we want, and that's why we put in place a very clear plan in the budget to tackle the two biggest barriers to growth in the economy, which is businesses not being able to recruit the staff they want, but also investment by businesses not being as high as we wanted. So we put in measures to deal with that. But when it comes to the longer term prospects for the economy, what I'm hearing from my finance minister colleagues here in Washington is confidence in the resilience of the British economy, a belief that we're on the right track. And when you look at the industries of the future, technology, life sciences, these are areas where the UK is very, very strong, and that is very encouraging for us in the longer term. Well, the IMF are very clear that the British economy is on the right track. They've welcomed the budget as tackling the fundamental challenges we face, whether it's businesses being able to recruit staff or other pressures to improve investment in the long-term growth potential of the economy. So there's a lot of confidence that Britain is doing the right kind of things. And remember, only last year we had the fastest growth of all the major countries, and the IMF's forecasts this week show that in a couple of years' time we'll be growing faster than France, Italy or Germany. So I think there is confidence that we are on the right track. I mean, when it comes to pressures in the NHS, we understand that people are working very hard. We understand that people have had pay rises that have not matched inflation. And that's why we've introduced cost of living payments of around £3,000 for the average household up and down the country, nearly £100 billion of support. The one thing we won't do, because it would be a terrible mistake, is to agree to an inflationary pay rise that means that we're still talking about inflation in a year's time. If we stick to the plan, we'll bring inflation down to below 3% this year, and then we'll put these pressures behind us. And I think that's what the British people want the government to do.
Civil society groups are making their own presence felt at the ongoing IMF World Bank spring meetings in Washington, D.C., carrying different banners. The CSOs are calling on the two Bretton Woods institutions to show more commitment to addressing crisis-ridden areas in Africa. The roads leading to the IMF and World Bank buildings are under heavy security to prevent any breakdown of law and order. The protesters, however, went ahead chanting solidarity songs. Let's check in on the weather now, shall we? Where authorities are saying the tropical cyclone smashed into Australia's northwest coast as a Category 5 storm, setting new wind speed records. But it has largely spared populated regions, including the world's largest iron ore export hub at Port Hedland. Cyclone Elsa made landfall early today with the highest intensity rating on a 1 to 5 scale, and then moved inland as emergency crew urged several remote communities along the storm's path to seek shelter and remain indoors. The Bureau of Meteorology said that Elsa is expected to weaken to a tropical low overnight and moving to the southern parts of the Northern Territory. Heavy bursts of rain are forecast in some areas, likely triggering flash floods. And away from that now, healthy living seems to be a thing these days in South Africa, especially among adults. But a group of women in Soweto are not being left behind in the fitness game, and the women are taking responsibility to improve their own indices by learning to swim. Experts say the swimming is a sport which exercises most parts of the body. A representative of the Royal Collection Trust says that China ware commemorating King Charles III upcoming coronation has been produced at a traditional kiln and factory linked to the royal household. Teacups, mugs, dessert plates and pillboxes are among the 5 items being churned out, each marked with commemorative emblems in celebration of the upcoming coronation, which will take place on May the 6th in Westminster Abbey.
The design on the Chinaware to mark the coronation, it features a newly painted coat of arms that's never been used before, and we've also made sure that we've captured certain elements within the design. We have the 4 national emblems of the United Kingdom, and we've also used entwined ribbons to represent the partnership between their majesties, and other devices such as oak leaves representing strength and laurel leaves representing peace. The process that we use to make our commemorative china has remained largely unchanged for centuries. Most of the pieces start with a plaster of Paris mould, then we move on to filling that with china slip. The china clay is sourced from Devon and Cornwall here in the UK, and then it goes through several firing processes, the biscuit firing, the enamel firing, it's dipped, it's glazed, and then it's decorated with the coronation decals. The commemorative china range currently contains 5 items. We have a mug, a pillbox, a tankard, a dessert plate and a teacup and saucer, and there will be a range of limited edition items to follow. The range of limited edition items will range in anywhere from a limited edition of 250 up to 1,000. Those will be at slightly higher prices than the other items, and then later in the year we will have other items being launched in the core range as well, such as a teapot and a Christmas decoration.
Meanwhile, Britain's Royal Mint unveiled celebratory coins also, including 50 pence and £5, marking the coronation of King Charles III next month. The range features the first crowned effigy of Charles on a coin. Designed by British sculptor Martin Jennings, the created Charles's uncrowned unveiled last year. It shows the monarch wearing the Tudor crown. Although the crown was destroyed in the 1640s, it has featured in past crowned portraits of kings from the 20th century. The new 50 pence is adorned with a depiction of Westminster Abbey, created by Royal Mint designer Natasha Jenkins, also with the king's cipher and his crown.
We have a full range of coins to celebrate the coronation, starting with the 50 pence. We also have a £5 crown and an ounce range. The 50 pence on the reverse, on the back of the coin, is a design of Westminster Abbey, and that is obviously where King Charles III will hold his coronation. And then on the reverse of the £5 crown is a beautiful depiction of the St Edward's crown, which will be used in the ceremony as well. The coins are going to be made in base metal, silver and gold, and will be designed for, a lasting memory of this historic occasion. And also, I'm delighted to say that these coins will also be going into circulation. The 50 pence will be going in this year. We've been very fortunate that King Charles has approved all of the coins in the range, including the obverse with the crowned effigy and all of the reverse designs.
And away from Britain now, enjoying a feast of berries, fresh fruits, and a bouquet of salad and herbs. Fatu, the oldest gorilla in the world, has celebrated her 66th birthday. The edible birthday gifts were a rare treat for Fatu, who's a resident of Berlin Zoo, whose diet usually consists of vegetables due to the high amount of sugar in fruits. And because Fatu's record age, surpassing the average gorilla lifespan of up to 40 years by more than 2 decades, she requires even more care right now. Fatu was able to enjoy her birthday treat without worrying about sharing with others, because although Berlin Zoo has 5 other gorillas, Fatu has her own pen due to her advanced age. Western lowland gorillas, such as Fatu, are considered critically endangered due to habitat destruction, and they are vegetarians. They also live in family groups consisting of several females and just 1 male. Well, I guess it's safe to say happy birthday to Fatu. Well, this is where we draw the cuttings on this edition of The World Today and for the week also. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Have a wonderful weekend and stay safe.